they dispersed all the fellows into parties according to what they thought would be most useful in the mines. Our commanding officer, British officer, said, whatever you do, don't disclose the fact that you have any technical knowledge at all, because you'll go straight down the mine. They don't want anybody to interfere with their machinery. So I put myself down as a librarian. My colleague put himself down as a road sweeper, and another 4 of us put also innocuous sort of things that you couldn't go wrong on, and we were all, the 6 of us were detailed to look after the mine machinery, and we were all technicians. So we had 2 problems there. One of them was that you had to do it so that whatever happened to that machinery didn't happen where you were. It had to be when it was working somewhere else, and hopefully not where your men were. So we never interfered with inner mine working stuff like ventilation systems or anything like that.
You're talking about sabotage.
Coal cutters. Coal cutters were quite big things with a great big band of jagged knives on it that cut into the coal, cut a slot out, and then the coal would drop and you just hack it out and put it on a conveyor belt. The only thing that went wrong with them usually was the gearbox or the motor, and when it did go wrong, it didn't hurt your chaps that were waiting. They'd either be waiting for it to cut the coal out, or after it had finished it had stopped. So they were not in the way of it and not liable to be injured if anything happened. So we focused our first sabotage on that. They used to bring the gearboxes in, used to get very overheated, and they had very short supplies of lubricating oil and grease. So everything that was in the slightest business of grease, wax, was boiled up into a horrible gunge, which they called ersatz lubrication grease. It was like black lard, greenish black lard. You get the gearbox back, take the cover off, and there'd be a mass of gears in there which you'd have to take out separately, clean them all up, because they inherited a bit of grease, dirt, coal dust, one thing or another, and a lot of them were second hand or were old ones anyway, and they had chips off the gears. So we thought we'd speed that up a bit. So we'd clean these up, and all we were given to clean it with was sawdust. You'd have to cover the thing with sawdust and then keep rubbing it until all the gears glistened. And because we were not supposed to be engineers, we used to do it as if we were ignorant, you know. And the Japanese eventually would say, good, very clean, put in box again, you know. So we put them all, and they'd watch you while you were assembling the gears as they should be. Okay, grease, 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 they'd say. And you'd have this big tub of grease, and you'd flop that in until it was level. You couldn't see the gears then, but there'd be a gap like that between the lid and the top of the grease. And there was a cap at the top which also had a hook on it, which they lifted it with a crane to put it into position. And as soon as that one coal cutter had done, if you were working on 2, he'd move to the next one, or the next one down. You had a sort of a conveyor belt arrangement. You were always repairing about 3 at a time. As soon as he got three machines away, if there's no one who was looking, you'd put a handful of old rusty bolts and things in the gears, bolt the thing down and screw the cap on. Now that would be all right. You'd take it down to the pit, connect it up and start it up. And nothing would happen until the grease got hot and melt. And all this stuff would go in and the thing would jam solid, chip chunks off the gears. And they all put that down to fate, you know, or they were firm believers in fate.
They never thought it was you?
No, it never came back on us. And the same with electric motors. They used to overload everything in the interest of speedo to get the maximum work done. and we used to get these burnt out motors come. Japanese girls used to make new coils for them and solder them all up, and they'd leave us to put the insulation in. You had to put a strip of fibre board or some other insulation between each coil to insulate them from the metal of the motor. Well, if no one was looking, and it was very often, you could easily get away with it, you used to put a hacksaw blade in between the bare copper and the what should have been insulation. And we used to have to test these things before they went out. And some of these were 600 horsepower for pulling the trucks up, you know, from the mine. It'd be as high as that mirror. And they didn't have a proper starter motor, they just had a big nice switch which used to throw showers of sparks out when you put it in. You had a thick rubber mat to stand on, and you connect this motor. You go and it starts spinning, and the chap would watch it for a bit. Ah, very good. Take it up the mine, you see. And then we had another gang of 6 men, all engineers, that were the heavy gang that took these up to the mine to connect it up to the main winch. Well, it wasn't until they got a load of, say, 10 trucks of coal on, and the Japanese winchman was told, because of the war effort, he's got to work harder, so it says maximum 10 trucks, so he puts 5 on. And of course that put a heavy strain on the motor, and there'd be a big blue flash and all smoke, and it'd stop. And his foreman would come and beat him up, because he'd overloaded it. And they burnt out all the coils again. Back it had come. It happened 3 times with one of these big motors, and they never once thought it could have been anything to do with us, because we were only road sweepers and we didn't know anything about that, that sort of thing.